Great, glad to see you.
to
Come
see
on
you.
in, put
Come
your
on in.
slide right over here.
All right.
And from Navigant Credit Union, it's great
Yes.
to have you.
Glad to be here.
And on Mondays, we talk business, okay?
Excellent.
So on other days, they talk about the arts, they talk about entertainment. We are a business-driven show, and we're a
Excellent.
business-driven bank.
Here we are.
Yeah, talk a little bit about what you're seeing in, just heard the Money Man on, we've got Saul Kaplan on next, but what are you guys seeing in the Rhode Island economy?
We've seen some really solid growth over the last 2 to 3 years
Yeah.
in our end. So, the commercial lending team, we deal with small businesses, investors in real estate, commercial and residential. We've seen a really nice increase. There's been no slowdown.
Yeah.
And one of the most positive things we see and that we feel is, unlike some of our counterparts, we're not out banging on doors.
Yeah, right,
We're
right.
getting calls, we're getting lots of referrals from CPAs, attorneys, real estate professionals that are sending us business from some really good small businesses in Rhode Island, which, of course, as we all know, Rhode Island is made up primarily of small
It's
business.
a small business state.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about a little bit on the small business. I don't want to pull you over.
Yeah, sure.
Talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what type of banking relationships that they're looking for. What is it that they're seeking out? Is it, are they building on to facilities? Is it a real estate driven, or are they looking for that, they need more inventory, so they're looking for a bigger line of credit?
So I would say it's a combination of all that.
Sure.
We've seen some businesses who are expanding their operations. So instead of renting space, they're
Yeah.
looking to buy a building, retrofit it for what they do. So we're seeing some really nice deals on the commercial real estate side, and through use of the SBA 504 program, not only the purchase of the building, but the build out of the interior, possibly moving heavy machinery and equipment. We can do that through the SBA 504 and of course the SBA 7A as well. So we've seen a lot of that type of expansion, but we've also seen a lot of smaller companies, whether it be manufacturing, retail, wholesale, that are looking for business lines of credit to help with their business cycle.
Yeah.
So some of these companies get a large order, they need some cash to buy their raw materials, and to get through that whole business cycle to work in process all the way out to sending the product out. Now they're waiting for their receivables money to come in.
Yeah, that last tricky part, the getting paid part, is always the tricky part.
And I will say that is still somewhat of a struggle for some companies.
Yeah.
Is the business is there,
Yeah,
but getting paid
yeah,
is taking a little bit longer. So again, working capital lines of credit are very helpful for that, in helping them with that part of the business cycle, where some of the trades are getting stretched out 90 days,
Yeah.
which is a long time.
yeah, no, absolutely.
And it's kind of unfair in a way, because some of the larger companies are the ones that are stretching out the small guys.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
And so that becomes a struggle. But solid companies with strong financials that are coming to us, that it makes sense to do these kind of loans. And in some cases, we will use the SBA
Yeah.
if there's a big collateral shortfall, or some other mitigating reason why we want to use them. But we do a lot of stuff in-house. We do
Yeah.
a lot of our loans in-house, conventional financing, as we would call it. And it's just the growth over the last 3 years has been explosive.
Yeah, that's great. And you cap out at about $5 million, right? I mean, that you're not gonna.
So
you're not
we
doing
have
it.
we have what we call our in-house limit of 5.5 million.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't
Yeah.
exceed that.
Yeah.
We're regulated by the state, DBR, and our insurer is the NCUA, National
Sure.
Credit Union Administration, similar to the FDIC in the banking world. From that perspective, we could lend much more,
Yeah.
but we choose not to.
Right.
I think our real sweet spot in the commercial real estate arena are loans that would be between 1 and 3 million.
Right.
But again, lines of credit, we like to say no loan is really too small for us.
Yeah.
We may have some that are too big,
Yeah.
or we decide that they're too big. But there's no loan too small. We have these Quest line of products we call our Quest product, that we can do lines of credit for as little as $5,000, $2,500.
Yeah. Right.
So those are kind of like the micro business
Yeah.
loans that we do.
Right.
And we work in conjunction with lots of the cities and towns that have borrowers or small businesses looking for that kind of
Right.
relationship.
You've got an early stage restaurant that's
Mhm.
just trying to get started, a little
Yep.
shop opening up that just needs that little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's we look at the whole thing. We do what we call a risk rating.
Yeah.
So we have like 7 different things we look at. Management experience is important.
Yeah.
We're not into, as most financial institutions aren't, we're not into financing brand new startups for people who have no experience.
Yeah.
Restaurants being a perfect
Yeah,
example.
right.
The old adage is like 3 out of every 5 fail, which is not really true. But if someone says, "Hey, I've been an attorney all my life. I want to go open up a restaurant,"
And there's
that's
still
great.
a lot of those, yeah.
That's great, but that's probably not something we're going to look at from the very beginning.
Gotcha. A lot of economic numbers, Len Ladaro came out with his report. He's got the state flying.
Mhm.
Jobs numbers come out one month, and it looks like we're going into a massive depression. 2 months later, it looks like we're as hot as a pistol. Is that part of this problem with this economy? Is that it doesn't have that huge forward momentum that if you've lived in Rhode Island, you've seen at different times. In the 80s, we got red hot.
Sure.
In the late 90s,
Sure.
we got red hot.
Sure.
And we're in a stage where it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2
Mhm.
steps forward, 1
Uh-huh.
step back. Talk a little bit about that and how you guys manage that, and then how you support your clients.
Sure. I think the first thing to look at is when you go back to the 80s and you look at today, 30 plus years later, it's a whole different economy.
Yeah.
It is a world economy.
Right.
It's not a local economy as it was in the past. It's based on what goes on in all the world markets. I think Rhode Island overall has always lagged behind, especially over the last, call it 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Maybe some other regions of the country are doing much better. We tend to lag. And Dr. Lodaro talks about that
Yeah.
all the time. His article this morning was interesting. He said, not quite ready to pop the champagne corks yet, but seeing continued positive signs. And I think because we're so small that I think we're going to continue to see some of those, up and down trends over maybe the next 6 to 12 months. I don't think we're out of the woods yet.
Yeah.
I think there's still, first of all, there are a lot of great small businesses in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, believe it or not, a lot of great small manufacturing businesses.
Yeah.
We lost the jewelry trade of many, many years ago. And, my dad worked in one of the jewelry companies, Coro, right here in Providence, as probably thousands of
But I
other
got to tell
people
you,
did.
we have 2 advertisers, Luca and Danny, which was an old school manufacturer,
Mhm.
and he's kind of got a new approach. He's a digital marketing fiend.
Sure.
There's a piece on him today. He's up 1,300% year over
Wow.
year.
Wow.
He's as red hot as can be, and Alex and Ani is back with us.
Sure.
They're another one, big manufacturer in
Yep,
the state.
yep.
There's big story in, I think it was Women's Wear Daily, one of the national style publications, B2B style publications, about how Rhode Island's actually pretty hot on the jewelry manufacturing.
Mhm.
Tiffany's is up in
Yep.
Highland and some of the others.
Mhm.
So it's interesting that it's kind of morphed into this much more direct branded
Sure.
version than that third-party costume jewelry
Sure.
that somebody made something for somebody else somewhere else in
Right.
the world.
Yep. I think we're seeing lots of other different types of manufacturers too. Some of the high-end technical manufacturing, circuit boards and things
they
of
come
that
to you?
nature. We have several in our portfolio now
Yeah.
that have over the last several years. One in particular, it's based out of Warwick, is just growing leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And was probably struggling 6
Yeah.
or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But we saw something in the owners and in what they were talking about in meeting.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, they have performed outstanding since that time. They continue to grow. Just received an email last week from the owner looking to maybe increase their line of credit. We're definitely going to look at that because it makes sense. They're
Yeah.
getting larger orders. And again, part of that whole business cycle, you've got to have some cash available to get through the end of the cycle and then get paid back.
One of the things that makes you different, and listen, we are a company about local, right?
Sure.
Like, we're about local,
We
we're
are.
a high-touch company, and
are.
that's what you guys, that's what's fueled your growth.
Sure.
I mean, I can't remember the number Tim said. It took you, 7,000 years to get to $1 billion, and then it took you like 4 minutes to get to $1.8 billion.
Yes. And we
So-
continue to grow, and
Right.
it's exciting because I always go back to my story. I used to be a regulator for the state of Rhode Island right after the banking crisis.
Oh, you were the one.
I was hired.
Yeah,
I was hired. And
you were the guy.
One of my first jobs was Credit Union Central Falls, which is the predecessor name to Navigant Credit Union. And back then, it was 1992, and Navigant, well, Credit Union Central Falls at that time, was about $350 million in assets.
Right.
So that's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're at over 1.8 billion in assets now. Part of it through acquisitions, a lot of it through branch expansion.
Yeah.
And we continue to look for opportunities, although fewer in Rhode Island, because as you probably well know, there are fewer and fewer credit unions in Rhode Island. And I think that's part of the regulatory environment. It's hard for some of the really small credit unions to keep up. But we are all about local.
Yeah.
We are local decision makers.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Oh,
big,
it's huge.
Big difference.
Everyone that's in that building in Smithfield, our headquarters, that's where all the decision making is done. No out-of-state offices to deal with, no boards of directors that have to approve loans. Credit committee gets involved on some circumstances where there might be a guideline exception we're asking for, but it's local decision making, all in that building. And it's great because we can get people answers very quickly. Sometimes 2 to 4 days, we can give you a yes or a no.
Yeah.
Or we need more info, but we're looking to move forward. And I think that means a lot to small business owners who are just, they want an answer. Are you in? Can you help us?
Right.
And if not, most of them understand. They may be a little frustrated, but
You're not
sometimes
gonna
you
run the
do.
clock for 6 months.
Sometimes you have to say no.
It's funny, Washington Trust, who's a great financial institution in Rhode Island, we get their press releases, and we're 7 years old as a company. In the early years, I'd say 90% of the big loans they were announcing were in Rhode Island, and now, the last 2 or 3 years, every project is in Connecticut. So it's interesting how their business model has morphed and changed. But I would literally say, and they usually send them out over, I don't know what it is, 5 million or something like that. So it's interesting. You feel a huge void. This was always been a very significant part of the Rhode Island's economy when you had Fleet right there as we gaze at the empty Superman building,
Yes.
and Citizens was over there. Now they're over there, and then they're moving up more towards your range. And here it is. Navigant's really become a financial powerhouse for Rhode Island businesses. Talk a little bit about your involvement in starting to take a leadership role. I know you guys have in where Rhode Island's going. Gary and I talked about it. Saul and I will talk about it. We talk a lot about it. We write a lot about it. I think it's important that community-based organizations be good corporate leaders. And it's not always popular, and sometimes you got to take a role, but sometimes it takes some outsiders in the private sector to take a stand.
I think that Navigant over the years, and again, Credit Union Central Falls, when we had that name, has proven we have a deep commitment to the communities in which we have a physical presence.
Yeah.
We are a very charitable organization.
Yeah.
We donate lots of time, talent, and treasure, as we say.
Yeah.
A lot of treasure, a lot of donations that are to charitable organizations, groups that we work with. We have a thing at Navigant called V-Force, which is an opportunity for people who work for the credit union to volunteer their time. They get a paid day off to go to some type of an event that
Keep that down. I don't want people hearing about a paid day off.
But it's resulted in hundreds of people participating. We're up to close to, I think, 300 employees. So you're talking, between 200 and 300 employees getting out into the community. And we've never lost our roots. We are a Central Falls credit union. That's where we started. We still have our office right there on Broad Street. We've expanded that office. One of the things we did was create a community room that small businesses or individuals or nonprofits can request to use that room free of charge.
Like a little incubator space?
It's like a little incubator space. We have a woman who works with us, Sandra Cano. She's actually,
we know Sandra, yeah.
So Sandra is one of the most energetic people you'll ever meet. And she has a business owners meeting. I think it's once a quarter, maybe every 2 months. There's one coming up, I believe, this week. And she draws anywhere from, I would say, 40 to 75 people that come. And they always have like a key speaker. Gary, our president, goes and speaks to the crowd, and they usually have some type of a focus, whether it's a city leader or someone from, we had people from the Division of Taxation there a couple of months ago, and she really fills the room, and everyone is welcome. But it's mainly the Pawtucket Central Falls arena. People come in and they're looking for assistance and help, and a lot of the staffers go. And we believe that we always have to give back to our communities where we are, and we do it. We do it a lot.
When are you coming to Providence? Now, let me just
That's a
give you a
great
couple
question.
options, right? I know you've got that nice building in Smithfield.
Yes, we do.
But imagine, right up there, that
Yes.
Navigant sign, the blue shining out over.
The new Superman.
Visible from 95 and 195.
That would
Talk
be
about
just a
your
little-
corporate leadership, right?
That would be just a little too big for us, but I will give lots of credit to our corporate leaders, seriously. I mean, Gary Furtado's been our
Yeah.
president for, I guess, close to 30 years now. He's been at the credit union close to 40 years. Really good guy who just leads the credit union and believes in the community and what we do. We have a great senior management team, leadership teams. We all take a really, really strong part in what goes on at the credit union. We believe in what we do.
So I'm going to put you down as 50-50 on acquisition of
Sure.
Superman.
Yeah, that
All right,
sure,
great.
sure, yeah.
Listen, I want to thank you so much.
My
This
pleasure.
was great.
Yeah, it was
Really appreciate, every partnership we've had, but also, there would be no Stadium Theater if it weren't for Navigant. I mean, you can name off 20 things around Rhode Island.
Sure.
And, I had the pleasure of working for John Chafee
Okay.
for 5
Wow.
years. And you drive around, and if you like he did that and he did that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. Navigant just touches a lot of things, and they're a great community partner. And I just want to say thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for coming in.
It was my pleasure.
And we'll talk soon.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, thank
Thanks.
you.
Take care.
Take care.